Good evening and welcome to Ghana Short. Ghana Short में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we are going to discuss something very, very interesting and very important. It's been quite some time now since Pahalgam happened. A lot of noise this side and that side of the border. Pakistan has gone ballistic. They want to before we could say anything, before we could even, throw a stone across the LOC, they started talking nuclear. And a lot of talk going on. Pakistan has, shown all their air force, their firing, everything, as if what is going to happen tomorrow. Well, it might happen tomorrow. Who knows? But they've reacted and they've fired Hataf 1 and Nasser also in the past 2 days. They fired a lot of things to show that look, they have a lot of capability, and if India takes the wrong step, they'll notch it up. That's what Asim Munir said 3 days back. Well, having said that, now let's look into a few issues of the escalatory dynamics, Pak nuclear postures. How do you go about doing deterrence? What are the China-Pak equations? How will they come? Because no one is going to fire a nuclear warhead as the first shot in a war if it happens. So far, we have not even mobilized. That's the state. That's the state of differential in the mental state between Pakistan and India. And even China has started reacting on this. So with this as a background, I said, look, all this is in the air, and everyone is talking, what he wants and what he understands. So then I said, the best person who can speak to us on this is Brigadier ARUN SAHGAL. For 2-3 issues. No, there's no doubt, sir. For the past 15-20 years, he's been talking with Pakistanis on track 2 issues. He's been part of a think tank which does all this. And he understands the Pakistani psyche. And he's also, had discussions with officials of their SPD or the Special Protection Department, or basically the nuclear establishment. And he's also written extensively on deterrence, conventional and nuclear, vis-a-vis China and Pakistan. And in this kind of a condition, we need to understand it. We need to understand how the psyche works. How will this entire business, what is happening today, escalate into a war? We also need to remember, in the history of mankind so far, ever since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 nuclear powers have never fought a full-fledged war. If you see, the space for conventional war at one end was defined by what happened in Kargil between India and Pakistan 20 years back, 25 years back. And then about 4 years back, what happened between China and India in Eastern Ladakh. These two virtually put the extremities of conflict, the way I look at it, between any 2 nuclear countries. But then we are not talking with a rational country like Pakistan, and their irrationality of their leadership is increasing by the day. So it is in this context that I yield the floor to Brigadier SAHGAL. Sir, please take it on from here and do explain to us and educate us as to how do you visualize all this going forward.
Thank you very much, Shankar. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. And as usual, it's always fascinating the way you frame the issues and you provoke the speaker to explain things. Let me start by saying, there is this stability-instability dyad that plays out in the Indo-Pak context. And this is driven by 2 fundamental perspectives. One is the subconventional versus conventional. What do I mean? The Pakistan perpetuates subconventional conflict against us in Kashmir and other parts of the country, in the belief that India's response matrix would be constrained and limited, and he can deal with that any escalation that takes place through its own current military capabilities, and if and when they fail, he has a nuclear card to play. We, because of the nature of the beast, have to have no option but to respond to this subconventional playground which he's tried to create in India through his cross-border war and proxy war and terrorism, to deal with him through conventional response strategy. Now here, an interesting dynamics comes into play. It's important to understand this dynamics. We have multiple options of dealing at the conventional level with any threat scenario vis-a-vis Pakistan. We are strong, we are capable, we have a credible military capabilities. But the fundamentals of this is that what is the nature of response? India is a responsible player, and India is not keen to start an all out conflict with Pakistan because of some terrorist incident in Kashmir, however dastardly it may be. But the fact of the matter is that having response to such a dastardly incident has to be there. Otherwise, the perpetuation of a subconventional conflict become a preferred strategy by Pakistan. Now, here comes another interesting aspect. Now, India can respond and India shall respond to such a subconventional act by Pakistan, which affects India's integrity, it imposes cost, and it affects the internal stability of the country, particularly in Kashmir. So, if India now retaliates, the Pakistani thinking basically is leveraged, I mean, is predominantly based on the fact is that despite the asymmetry in power, they are capable of handling first and second rungs of escalation with India. And if should they fail, and as part of their full spectrum deterrence, they would invoke the logic, reasonable, and rationale for use or let's put it this way, touting the use of nuclear weapons as part of his strategic thinking. Behind this thought is one simple rational factor which I want our people to understand is this is that Pakistan does not want to allow, despite conventional asymmetry, to India to dictate or control the escalation dominance. This is where the situation lies. In the current scenario, this is what the situation is. India has multiple options to respond. India will respond, and when it does respond, it will be a credible response. But the Pakistanis have started believing that they can manage their response and allow and retaliate with counter response of the same caliber or a higher caliber. And that's where I have all stated in other places also that look, we have to be prepared for second and third rung escalation, which basically means is at each rung, therefore, have to be much more stronger than the previous rung and much more damaging to him. Now, here the problem lies is, and this is where the world now comes into play, is that he now starts saying is that a irrational scenario of Indian dominance is prevailing, and I have no option at this point in time but to start looking at my complete total military capability, which i.e. includes nuclear weapons, and therefore if India continues this irrational escalation of the latter, will have no choice but to use nuclear weapons. Now, this is the dilemma it creates. This is the dilemma it creates in the minds of planners and also leverages it internationally. Here, I would like to highlight two other points. Please try and understand that Pakistan has for a long time leveraged its strategic location to its advantage. it has allowed itself to be used, like their defense minister said in an interview recently, that we have been used for perpetuating terrorism across against the Soviets and other places. It has continues to have a large number of friends and a reasonable number of, I would say, supporters within the establishment in the West. And in here, I like to point out not so much America, but also the United Kingdom, and now newfound friend as China. So they come in support of that. But I'll leave this point, I'll come to this point a little later. But the problem now comes for us is, how do we manage escalation? How do we respond? It is here that we have to be very clear and in no uncertain terms convey to the Pakistanis is that if they want to shift from conventional to strategic deterrence, that is the use of nuclear weapons, there shall be an Indian response, and Indian response will be credible, and that credibility of this response will something which will punish Pakistan much more than they think they can get away with. Bottom line, Pakistan has to understand that the nuclear card is not a card they can play. If you look at Ukraine, the Russians could do this with the Ukrainians, because Ukrainians was a non-nuclear power, and if they had to get a nuclear response capability, it had to come from the West, and the West was not keen to getting involved in uh, keen to get involved in Ukrainian conflict. But here, India is a credible nuclear power. We have a full spectrum deterrence also. I mean, it's not that India does not have a full spectrum deterrence. We have. And we will use it if required to be used. So Pakistan, so there has to be a declaratory statement by India. India is a peaceful player. India is a power that does not look at nuclear weapons as a tool for war fighting, but as a political deterrence. But should the conceptualization of the fact that the political deterrence is being leveraged against me as my weakness, India shall respond. And the manner of response will be decided by India in a manner that it deems fit. It is not breaking the no first use doctrine. It's not breaking anything. It is just being as responsible. And the term which the Chinese use is important for Indian, both the establishment and the Indian people to understand, is that is called the certitude of response. Let's not be fooled by the fact that there will be no response. The response will be certain, it will be direct, and it will be deadly. That is what is the most important thing that we have to understand. So, under these circumstances, we have to use and we have the ability to disabuse Pakistan that there is no space for, for conventional deterrence within the equation which they are trying to create between non-conventional and nuclear deterrence. They try to close the space of conventional deterrence. We have to prize open the space by our actions and by staying firm and directed on what the level of our escalation would be, and being very, very clear that we can manage the escalation better.
So
I,
you said we should be able to manage the escalation better and prize open the space which Pakistan is closing. Well, they close this space between the conventional and the strategic by coming out with their red lines. Now, if those red lines are crossed, I will go strategic. And in fact, if those red lines are threatened, I'll go strategic. What do you think are first for general understanding of our people? Oh, they have some red lines which they put out. Okay, you can't lose. They can't lose certain territory and this and that. It's not as if the first shot is fired, they're going to go nuclear. and you dealt with them also. Could you just broadly spell out what those red lines are, and then we'll be able to understand that space which is available.
Okay. The red lines, I have a paper which is written by one of our colleagues who from Pakistan, who was member of the strategic planning division, senior member, general level officer. They are very clear that red lines are an abstraction. The word uses red lines are abstract. There are no
Okay,
defined red lines. Do you
I
understand that?
understand. It
The
could be a
abstraction,
band.
abstraction is used as a ruse to define red lines whenever the point of pain increases. So we have to understand this. There are no red lines per se. And in the escalation dynamics that we are looking at, that means response, tit for tat response, higher level of response, even a little higher level of response, there is no territorial construct. The level of damage to their overall military capability cannot be such that the nation state is at risk. No, the whole logic, and this is important thing we must understand. The red line abstraction is used to define it in a term that suits their interest and to befool the international system that there are red lines. There was an interview with an Italian journalist in which they talked about the space-based red line, the water-based red line. They talked about if the military capabilities
Degraded.
are impacted, and also the maritime space-based red line if they are Karachi Harbour, etc., etc. Those are red lines defined during the Cold War between the Americans and the Russians. There is no, mm, it is I would say stupidity on part of anybody to even look at those red lines seriously. And this is an important point. We must understand that there is this abstraction that is being leveraged of red lines to deny India the ability to deal with Pakistani's cross-border terror, and to say that any level of conventional escalation will push us towards the nuclear dimension. Now, this is the, to me, the most dangerous part of it, but we should not fall prey to it. And this is what I would strongly urge people to understand, that despite all this, there is a rational actor syndrome prevails within the Pakistani establishment. But given the nature of the present military leadership, the worry for not only me, for the world should be, is that Pakistan, through its own hubris, may start getting carried away and break the taboo and go down the nuclear route. Although I believe that they will not be able to do that, but what worries me is the statements coming out from the defense minister, statement coming out from the power minister, who has the temerity to say these weapons are not to be used to be placed on the chalks or on the roundabouts of the nation. They are for use. I mean, these are the kind of an absurd statement. And what is even more shocking to me is that the global pundits, the global non-proliferation pundits, the global
Are
arms
keeping
control
quiet.
pundits are sitting all over across the world, have never even squeaked a word of criticism towards Pakistan on this issue. This is the duplicity of these so-called atomic czars who sit over there and pass judgment on everybody else. But when a situation like the Russians were talking about it, they were writing panes and panes of paper on this. But when the Pakistanis are talking this nonsensical things, of use of nuclear use, there is not a word against them. See, this is the duplicity that we have to worry about. But don't worry, it's not important. The important part we have to understand is that red line is an abstraction. There are no red line per se. And it is important at some day, at some time, and if this be the crisis, we need to test them out. We need to test them out and show it to them that don't befool the world and certainly do not befool my country.
Right, sir. I think what you said is very important for everyone to understand, and I like to go a little one step further on this route. You see, whatever statements of nuclear saber rattling have come out from their interior minister, the foreign power minister and the defense minister, and things like that. And they're pretty irresponsible statements to for a start. But but the uniform community has not spoken a word about it. Neither has Asim Munir spoken a word about it. He's not spoken about it in all his talks in this time. So you think it gives me a feeling that they understand that the nuclear card is a no-go. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, this is they might have allowed these two people to, speak, or they've told you break that hoodoo of the talk part of it, and there is a deniability somewhere later on. So in this kind of a thing, is there a reason or is there a way that we can call them out and tell them, look, don't go that route at all, because that route is a two-way route, and put it across to them very clearly that there are no red lines in this whole conflict.
Okay. Okay. So there are two, three things which I like to highlight. First is the state of play within Pakistan. Uh, the you are rightly pointed out that the political establishment is manipulated by the military in Pakistan to define the terms and the norms of what they would like the world to believe. So they have become the spokespersons of the military. It is sadly it is the other way around, because here the political establishment decides and military acts. But in Pakistan, it is the military decides and the politicians act. That's
Yeah,
that's issue
that's
one.
the nature of the beast, sir.
Okay, okay. The second point is that there is a degree of scare. There is a degree of scare within the Pakistani, not so much establishment, but among the Pakistani public. You have seen the piece which just came out yesterday or this morning's Times of India, but it was in New York Times. It's a New York Times story. How the people in Pakistan are worried. They are worried about the stupidity of this escalation, this whole thing taking place. They are worried about the cost of living going up. They're worried about their children. They're worried about of what will happen tomorrow to their lives. The well-heeled Pakistanis are always the ones who talk the maximum. But it is the poor Pakistani who is suffering. He is the worried man. And and within that construct, it is also for the first time being acknowledged. Two things are being acknowledged. One, that Pakistan suffered much huge casualties in the Jafar Express case than they acknowledge. It is being now openly talked about, and it's been talked about in the Western media, the so-called Godi media of XYZ. Okay. The second issue is there is a great degree of discontent within the military. So they believe that this Islamization of the military, when the world is moving towards development and growth, is a very, very negative step and a backward step. Young Pakistanis are very smart guys. They want to live in a world as a normal citizens. But the fact of the matter is that they are being branded as a terrorist state, or a state which is on a world or teetering on the brink of collapse. So now this is what the issue is. So there is this whole new narrative. The army wants to be in uh, in the background and allow are using the politicians to this thing. And then there is one more angle, and that angle is that Pakistani state does not want war or any degree of escalation. They would prefer not to, the things do not escalate. That is why they are leveraging the Chinese and the Americans to try and pressurize India not to cross the threshold of a conventional conflict and launch conventional strikes against Pakistan. And they are trying to say that, okay, we'll do joint investigation, we'll do this, the normal similar ploys that have been the standard narrative by Pakistan. But the point at issue is that they are concerned and they are leveraging their partners in the West as well as in the East. And here it is very interesting to see that the big power competition is also playing out in the subcontinent. And you talked about it. I mean, bringing in the China factor a little early but in our discussion. The fact of the matter is that the Chinese have come out openly in support of Pakistan, and
Pakistan, yes.
and they are doing that in the belief that the United States has come out openly in favor of India, although that's not true. United States has been much more nuanced in its support to India. But that's not, I'm not worried about that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that they are trying to get the international community to get involved to prevent escalation or prevent war of any kind. So this is what the game plan is. So game plan is have the certitude of using subconventional, cry horse and cry wolf when conventional is used. If that doesn't work, use nuclear card. If the nuclear card is starts getting frayed, then use the international community with whom they have a fairly number of IOUs of the past to ensure that that the things do not escalate and thereafter come out flying. Will Pakistan learn any lesson from it? No. It will only be a status quo for minimum of 4 years maximum, because the whole ideation of peace and stability in Kashmir, despite my large number of Indian commentators calling about situation in Kashmir, the fact of the matter is that situation in Kashmir is stable, peaceful, and reasonably peaceful. There is as much of terrorism or anti India feeling or anti establishment feeling that is there in any other state. It is no different. You have 86 flights coming in, it's no different. So the question basically is that this is against the whole subcheese, the whole norm of the Pakistani case, that Kashmir is unstable and people of Kashmir are rising. People of Kashmir are not rising. People of Kashmir are looking for livelihood. People are looking for peace and stability. They are looking for integration with a country which is going to be a $5 trillion economy tomorrow and will be $10 trillion economy. Their future lies in this. Their future does not lie in a state which is on the verge of bankruptcy. So this scares the establishment in Pakistan. This scares the establishment. The entire bogey of Kashmir might go away. So it's a much more complex issue, sir, than simply trying to use weapons and non-weapons and complex.
Yeah, I
So this is what.
completely agree with you, sir, on this part of the story, that it is an oversimplification to say that, Pakistan is one dimensional. It just wants to use war. It shows some demonstrations, and with the demonstration, there's always a nuclear flag, and that will prevent the whole thing. That is not the way. And it, like you rightly said, if it doesn't work, already start crying to the international committee, where you rightly said that chap Victor Gao has come out openly in support of China. It's not
Yeah,
only
yeah.
Victor Gao, it's Lin Van Wing, Wang Shida, all this Liu Jiang. All these fellows have been writing in Shanghai institutes and South China Morning Post and wherever, NetEase and all that. They've been talking, and they're already talking of this business as how, and they've gone to another level, if I might say, which I'll cover on a later date. Uh, as far as the audience are concerned, as to how this instability has started affecting China. And that is why they should get involved. And because instability in Pakistan affects CPEC, and hence they have their interest, and they're now openly talking about it. So, in this kind of a thing, sir, is there a case while we are putting pressure, we are putting pressure by not talking? Silence has its own music or sound. It's called the sounds of silence, after all. So we we are not responded so far on anything. But what you said earlier is something very, very important, which I think everyone should understand. Uh, in Pakistan, I think there's a horizontal split. The upper echelons above this horizontal, well heeled, who have lived a life of the lower echelons of Pakistan, are happy. They couldn't care a damn what happens. And they are happy playing these games. But it's the lower level, which you said, the younger people who are worried about their future, who
Yes.
are who are termed as terrorists wherever they go, or those who have to hide behind the Indian identity to prosper abroad, who are feeling the pinch. So this horizontal split in this society is a schism which we have to exploit. We ex- is there a case for us to start a narrative based on the split, based on whatever pressure we are putting, right? And also start signaling certain things, whether it's conventional or strategic is a different story. But isn't it time for us to start a new narrative rather than
Absolutely.
just being silent?
Oh, we have to stop addressing only the Pakistani establishment. We have to start addressing the Pakistani people. How much are you suffering? Who's suffering? What are your options? And the fact of the matter is this: is that if Pakistan has to grow and because to become a normal state, it needs growth, it needs investment, it needs stability. Now, with the kind of steps that we are going to take, we have taken. People talk about underwater treaty being is not being very effective. Nonsense. It's going to impact their cropping season now, the current cropping season. And tomorrow, once the monsoon, if we leave out, release water, it's going to affect them further. It's going to cause floods over there. So the question is then we have stopped all imports from Pakistan, which basically mean when we say even third party import, we're basically saying is you cannot reroute goods via Dubai and other places, which has been the form. We have about $3 billion trade with Pakistan through Dubai, etc. All that's going to stop. It's going to impact them. Already Pakistan pays 26 rupees per kilowatt for electricity. People are dying. And on top of that, there is an insurgency brewing up within Pakistan. Every day there's an attack in Balochistan. And I was quite amused by to notice that this Victor Gao, whom I met long time back, and I've known him, he has the temerity to say that look, we are watching what is happening in Balochistan, and short of saying that India was involved, he says we know what the forces were trying to kill the Chinese. This is the kind of attitude the Chinese have, and Chinese have this attitude. You know why? Because China has by and large converted Pakistan into a client state. And Pakistan has sold the entire west coast of Makran and the entire coastline to China and allows Chinese to do willy-nilly everything. And for the first time, private military enterprises
Contractors.
have entered in Sindh for the security of the. I mean, which responsible country in the world who calls itself a nuclear power has this? So we have to sell this narrative to the people of Pakistan. We have to tell them is that look, you cannot start using this low-level sub-conventional card against a country like India and succeed. You can cause me momentary embarrassment, but that will not take away my growth, that will not take away my strength, that will not take away my capacity and capability. 2029, 2030, we are going to have a $125 billion defense budget. We would be able to do much more. We can launch technological oriented attacks against you even now. Please understand that. We are capable of doing that. The fact that we have not done it is not because we are weak. We have not done it because we are a rational country. We are a rational player. We are a responsible country. This is the message that has to go to Pakistan. And this message has to go is that what Pakistani military come political establishment who is totally submitted to the military is doing is is to destroying the national cohesion, national economy, national political system, and putting the future of 280 million Pakistanis at risk.
Risk. Right. So if this is the status, sir, and like you rightly said, Pakistan has sold itself off completely to China. How do you think China will take this whole ball forward from here? I mean, it's okay for a guy like Victor Gao to say what he said, and he's a loudmouth at large all over the world. He goes and speaks. I mean, he speaks on everything, everywhere, as if, and he's fitted because he's the only one probably who's allowed to speak everywhere. And that's the way I look at it because many people here, and that's fine. And of course, the guys who generally uh, talk and write about India have spoken. And that also is across the entire spectrum. There is also a view that China can do very little in this whole story. They don't have much influence. They can have influence with Pakistan, but they know that their influence with India has gone down quite a bit. And they also feel there's also a feeling that look, uh, today at one point of time, China could have been a foil for India's growth. But today they feel that look, for us the problem is what if Pakistan completely collapses? They're providing a backstop for Pakistan, and that's their worry. Otherwise, complete whatever China has invested in Pakistan goes. So from here on, how do you think China will approach this whole deal?
Okay.
And
So
all we need to also, I mean, why I'm saying this is it's like this. Uh, we have to also take into consideration that China has its own internal problems. It is in a tariff war of its own. It's not a small thing. It's almost a fight for survival there. So under those circumstances, how much leeway or how much residual capability will China have to influence issues here? If it has, then we have to play a different game. If it doesn't have, we have to play a different game.
okay.
No, that is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, sir. So, very interesting. Look, these are my views, sir. The, the broader geopolitical calculations have become part and parcel of our current situation. That's important point to note. In this geopolitical calculations, the issue is how is China looking at India-China detente and India-US relations, and unfortunately that's an important aspect. The I think what Victor Raos and other people are trying to say are sending out what are called a crass, I repeat the word crass messages on behalf of their political leaders to sort of to tell, look, you are there a limit of how much you can go towards the Americans, etc. It is also impacting on the fact is that they believe that a certain degree of coercion works with India, and this is a lesson perhaps that they have drawn from the 4.5 years of this thing. The lesson that we have drawn is that standing firmness works, and the other guy always gives in. But that's how this thing. The next issue is that another interesting statement being made by the Chinese is that India has no option but to look at Chinese investments for its own economic growth and prosperity, and if they don't do it, it's going to be at their cost. So this whole trade war, tariff war, supply chain realignments, and what stand India is taking, particularly our political stand or not opening up to China, and if we want to open up very selectively, is hurting the Chinese. So they are sending a message to us, the way I look at it, and the message basically is this: is do not neglect China. China is a major player. China can also be a regional influencer if you play your cards properly, and therefore do not discard China completely and go to the Western camp. And this is a subtle message from their perspective. What we are trying to suggest, do is this: you stay put out of it. It's got nothing to do, it's a bilateral issue, and do not get involved with this thing. We have handled you, my view, we have handled China for 4.5 years along the line of control and not allowed them to escalate. They might have had some limited successes here or there, but by and large, there have been no show for 4.5 years. The military aspect of the PLA, it remains untested. Even the so-called gray zone operations are operations being carried out against inferior powers, just like the Americans use its huge influence and power against small players like in Iraq or in Afghanistan, etc., and did not get much benefit out of it. They There was a survey only is come this morning. Is the 69% of the Chinese believe, not 60, 80% of the Chinese believe using force against Taiwan is a wrong
Is
policy.
not wrong policies.
So the point I'm trying to make highlight over here is this: is that China is, as it is want, is to playing multiple cards and playing at multiple levels, sending multiple messages. We have to see what message that we want to pick up. And 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 I'm not going into the policies of my government at this point in time, but they are clever enough to understand, and they to how to respond. But the point from my analyst I'm trying to say is that the China is trying to say to us is basically is this: is that India has to take a call. Where does its long-term future lies? Does it align itself with the West completely or partially, or in strategic terms, in economic terms, in trade and tariff terms, in technology terms, or the new global security initiative and global economic order which the Chinese are trying to say, put across, should India be part and parcel of it? India is very clear that having been a colonially subjugated, does not want to have a scenario in the future where India will be economically, politically, and in terms of security being subjugated to another national state, another regional hegemon. India will carve out its own future. India has the capacity and the capability of doing it, and India is doing it. We might be a little slow, but we are there. So the point is important point for people to understand is this: is that China is sending messages. China is hedging. China is trying to tell us don't go westwards by invoking their relationship with Pakistan. And another element of that is that the China is thinks itself that the inevitability of contestation with United States, and in that inevitability of contestation in the United States, the geographical boundaries of the Arabian Sea going to Persian Gulf, etc., and its main trade routes are becoming going to become important, and therefore they will need Pakistan for that, and that's a local strategic messaging or regional strategic messaging that they're trying to give. They are my perceptions. I'm questioned to.
No, yeah, you're right, sir. At this point of time, I mean, I would put it this way. The way I look at it, I mean, I'm with you 100% on the way China is playing its hand and what it is. My only thing is this: whichever way you look at it, China today is much weaker than China 5 years back.
Totally agree.
For whatever this thing. India today is much stronger than India 5 years back. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's a given. And Pakistan today is far worse than what it was even 5 years back. Maybe it's compounded. Its rate of decay has compounded. In this kind of a scenario, while what we have spoken so far, or rather what we have not spoken so far, we have not spoken or addressed the international community anything. We just said, look, we are going to today close the trade, or tomorrow we are going to close the water, and things like that. We just made announcement and let everyone guess what our intentions are, and let Pakistan second guess that we're going to war tomorrow with them, without even having mobilized. I mean, so far there's no news of our mobilization also. I mean, that's the differential in the way we are handling things and where Pakistan is reacting, and where the world, especially China, has started this reaction. So you see a dichotomy in this, and how do you see in this kind of a scenario? I'll get back to our thing, or escalation dynamics will work.
See, to my way of looking at it, the way we have handled the situation so far is that we have handled the political and economic aspects of the situation much more deftly than anybody would have ever expected us to do. Revoking the Indo-Pasha Treaty, imposing some trade sanctions, etc., are an important tools against an impoverished country. It may not be an important tool with another country, but a country which is tethering on the brink of economic collapse. They are important tools. Every time you do not have to use a muscular tool to send a message. The same message can be given by any other means. Number two, it also shows the confidence and the capacity and the capability of the Indian state that should push come to shove, it, it has the credibility of military power to deal with the situation. This is an important message also we are saying. We are not going honky dory, doing exercises, putting NOTAMs in the sea and firing some 10-year-old missile, calling it a new test of a 400-kilometer missile system, etc. Now, those are childish kind of things. We are not doing it so far. What we have done it is to put our fleet in the ocean, send up just opening up our spaces, getting like they say in any game, you just start warming up. Opening up your body to say, okay, yaar, I'm ready for anything. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not to do anything, but I am open up. I'm ready. I'm ready. Just to the second issue, which we are also trying to tell the global system, is that while India is dealing with Pakistan, our eyes are constantly focused on our economic development. We are going to continue with our trade arrangements. We're going to continue with our trade investments. We are keen to finalize our uh, uh, trade agreements with the United States, with EU, with Australia, other countries. The whole ball game is this thing: is that India is unifocused as it should be, as a responsible major regional power, to ensure that an event like this, important as it is, requires to be dealt with as it is should not become only on a military centric event, but we are trying to impose costs by other means, keeping the military option open, and yet continuing with the business as usual for a country of 1.4 million who wants to be an economic engine of growth for its people and for the region and the world.
Thank you, sir. I think that was fascinating what you covered. That look, India is playing a very cool game, a balanced game, and from what I can infer, we are playing the longer game. We are not over focused on Pakistan. Pakistan is there, it's creating problems, it's created a situation for us, and we'll handle that situation. That's the way things are panning out. And we are handling that situation. And simultaneously, like you rightly said, we are handling all other issues, whether it's getting to a trade deal with USA, or giving appropriate signals to China or to the rest of the world the way a good growing power needs to do. So that's a very, very important takeaway today for everyone, right? As days go by, my last question to you: Do you see a stability, a patience, and a maturity in the way we are handling international affairs and Pakistan in particular?
I think we have handled the issue so very well so far. I mean, I my personal belief is that we have handled the issue very well. We reached out to a large number of countries. We have explained our position, etc., and there is a large number of understanding. We have not sort of uni-focused ourselves on security issues. Vis-a-vis Pakistan, before Pahalgam happened, the feeling that we were getting was that the Pakistan messages that we were getting from Pakistan was that they were keen to push back on Kashmir, put it in the back burner, and start looking at a much more nuanced and a much more uh, larger economic and political engagement with India. And in that, they were only thing, the constant refrain is we should talk to each other. India should not sort of push us in the background. No talk is not good, etc. But where this has come from, Pahalgam has come from, within this concept is surprising or not so surprising. Because again, I go back to the point I was trying to make earlier, is that there is a disconnect between the political establishment and the military establishment, and within the military establishment there is disconnect, and that disconnect has got sharpened by irresponsible remarks of the army chief at number of places. People only talk about his of his speech at the overseas Pakistanis, but
No,
before
but he's
that,
spoken otherwise also.
oh no, he spoke at the Kashmir Day event
Yes.
in Muzaffarabad, where he said this just about the same thing. So and this is where the tactical mindset of the Pakistani comes. People keep saying the Pakistani they are actually tactical. This is the worst part. They are like Punjabis, they abuse first, then they do anything else. They don't want to fight, but they abuse you. But see, so the whole issue basically is, he says, let's get this thing done. Let's get do this thing done. And the fact of the matter is, the way they singled out our Hindu community in this massacre is a telling commentary. And is a telling commentary of the mindset, of the putrid mindset of the Pakistani military establishment. I directly I'm saying to the military establishment, it is your putrid mindset that you have done this, and as usual, without thought of the consequences. You might
Thank
think,
you, sir. Yeah, please, sir.
no, I say you might think you can get away with it. Might think nothing has happened, but the consequence shall be there. You are already reaping the consequences. More will come as the time goes by, and you will be the sufferers. Do not think that you can undermine a state, Indian state, by such misdeeds. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The consequences will come. Matter of time. All Pakistanis who are watching it, please understand. And these consequences, I hope, are not going to be military in nature. This will be beyond military, and that will be the worst consequences for the state of Pakistan. And we'll talk of this as we go along. But this, with your permission, I'll take a few questions.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Right.